In today's video, I'm going to show you how to paint this adorable little mushroom house with a cute little kitty peering out the window. Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi. On this channel, we paint digital watercolor and gouache on the iPad, and I use the app Procreate. Most of my tutorials are step-by-step tutorials that are meant to be followed along, and I have a list of all of the supplies that I'm using today in the description as well as a pinned comment. So for today's video, I'm using the Messy Gouache brush pack. So I'm going to open up the medium-sized canvas. It's an 8 by 10 inch canvas that comes with the set. It has a subtle paper texture. So we're going to import the traceable into this file. So first, I'm going to turn this layer off that has all the brush textures. I'm going to go right to the top and then import the traceable above it. To import a traceable, all you have to do is go to the Actions menu, tap on Add, and insert a photo. So I've imported the traceable. I'm going to tap right here and then zoom out. So there's a color palette right at the top, which you can use, or you can use your own colors. And then there is the traceable. So what we're going to do first is we're going to put this color palette on its own layer. So I'm just going to go to the selection tool. I'm going to go to freehand and lasso around it. Then with 3 fingers, I'll swipe down and cut and paste. And now we have the color palette on its own layer. Then I'm going to go to the traceable layer. I'm going to tap on N. Oops, let's turn it off. I'm going to tap on N and reduce the opacity. We're not using the line art. We just need to see what we're painting, but we don't need to use the line art. So I'm going to go to the layers panel. I'm going to go to the paint here layer, and I am going to select this color right here. I'm going to press and hold to select that color. That is the color picker function. And then I am going to go to a brush in the Messy Gouache brush set. It is brush number 31. And this brush is a dual color brush. So right now I'm seeing the blue, but I'm also seeing a little bit of yellow that I had picked earlier. So what you want to do for a dual color brush is pick 2 colors. So make sure that you're on disc mode. And I've already picked the blue. Now I want to pick a second color. I don't want to have yellow. So I'm just going to go back to that blue and maybe make it a little bit lighter. Just a little bit. So there's a little bit of a change in the saturation. And depending on how much pressure you apply, you'll see more of one color or the other. So with this brush, depending on how much pressure you apply, you will get an interesting texture like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a background from around this point here all the way up to this point here. I'm not going to color the bottom because we are going to have grass down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, with light pressure, start to apply a few strokes, and I'm varying the pressure. Sometimes I'm pressing a little bit harder. So now we're going to paint the grass. I'm just going to zoom in and grab this color right here. It's in the second row, and that will be the base color for our grass. I'm going to bring back the traceable, and then I'm going to use another brush. This brush right here, brush number 42, dual color grungy flat brush B. So that's a dual color brush. So let's select 2 different colors. So I've already selected this color. For the second color, I'm going to go back to that color that we selected. And then I'm going to go a little bit darker. So depending on how much pressure I use, I will get pockets where it's a bit lighter, pockets where it's a bit darker. With this brush, you can create a texture like that if you apply light pressure. If you apply heavy pressure, you're going to get a lot more pigment and you won't have as much texture. So vary the pressure to get an interesting look. I'm going to go down in size so I have a little bit more control, and I'm going to start painting in the grass. And I am using relatively light pressure because I want that interesting texture on the edges. So that is the grass done. Now let's move on to the next step, which is to paint all of this foliage right here. So I'm going to tap on plus in the layers panel. We want the foliage to be a slightly darker color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that color right there, and I'm going to select the brush first. So for the foliage, I want to use brush number 50. This is a nice brush that has a little bit of a taper, and it has this nice dry texture, which is interesting. So again, this is dual color. Pick 2 colors of your choice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go quite a bit darker. With this brush, what I'm going to do at a smaller size, size 15, with lighter pressure, I'm just going to create the stems for everything first. And if you use light pressure, you will get a little bit of texture. If you use really heavy pressure, you will see more texture on the edges, but not so much in the line. But right now I just want to create the stems first. I always like to do the stems first with a smaller size. And you can thicken the stem at the bottom a little bit. And then you can go in with a larger size, and then we can create the leaves. So for the leaves, what I'm doing is I'm starting out here and then pressing hard and then releasing the pressure as I move down. Because what that will do is you will get that slight taper, and I'm going to do that on both sides of the leaf like that. So I'm just going to paint in the leaves. And now we are going to do the most fun part, which is actually the mushrooms themselves. So we are going to go to that layer where we have the foliage and tap on plus, create another layer, and we're going to do all of the red. You can label your layers. Generally don't do that, but let's just label this red stuff. So all of the red stuff I'm going to paint in this layer. So I'm going to grab this red. It's quite saturated, and you know the drill now. We have dual color brushes, so we also have to select a second color. So let's select the brush first. So for the mushroom and all of the red elements, I'm going to use brush number 16. It's a dual color thick paint, and it has a nice texture on the edges, but not too much. So I'm going to select the second color. Right now I have green, and I just wanted to show you what it would look like if I kept it as green. So it would mix in some of that green, but I don't want that. I want the second color to be similar to the red. So I'm going to tap on the red. So now it's similar to the red, but I do want to change the hue just ever so slightly towards orange. Light pressure, that's kind of the texture that you will get. And if you apply heavier pressure, you will get more of that second color mixed in. If you want even more variation, you can go into your second color and make it even more different. So what I'm going to do is towards the edges, I'm using lighter pressure. Lighter pressure means more texture. If I apply a lot of pressure, do you see there's limited texture? I want more texture on the edges to give it that painterly vibe. So I'm using quite light pressure towards the edges. In some areas, I'm going to press a little harder. In some areas, I'm pressing a little bit lighter. So you get a subtle color variation. And when you lift your pencil and lay down more pigment, you will see a little bit of that overlap. So it's kind of like, you know, you put down the paint, it's starting to dry a little bit on the paper, and you've laid down some more pigment. That's what it's meant to look like. Now, if you don't like a lot of that, you can always smudge it out. There's no problem. So I'm going to leave that for now. I'm going to come back a little bit later, and I'll show you how you can add even more texture to that. But let's just lay down the base colors for all of our red items. And what I want to do now is I want to add some texture to these red items. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn off that layer where we have the traceable, because I find it's a lot easier to see what's happening without the traceable. So we have this interesting painterly look. If there's any area where you feel like I'd like it to be a bit smoother, you can always go in with the smudge tool. So I'm going to go to the Messy Gouache, and there are a few smudgers that you can pick from. With smudgers, I always suggest that you start off with a smaller size and then work your way up. What I do want to do is add a little bit more color variation and texture to all of the red stuff. So I'm going to go to the layers panel where we have red stuff and tap on plus and create a clipping mask. So that way, anything that I do in this clipping mask layer is only going to show up on the painted portion underneath. It's not going to go everywhere. So what I'm going to do is select this color, and I'm going to use brush number 21. And I'm going to darken this a little bit and have a look. And I'm just applying very light pressure like that to create a little bit of texture. What I want to do is I want to add a little area where it's a tidbit lighter, maybe where the light is hitting it. So I'm going to grab that color and go lighter. And with this color too, I'm going to go a bit lighter. I'm going to tap back on this and let's see. Yeah, that's nice. So I'm going to increase the size of the brush and just create areas where it's a little bit lighter, just a little bit here and there. So I'm going to go to the layers panel, tap on plus, and we are going to paint the mushroom stalks. That's our main color. And for our second color, I'm going to grab this color right here, and then I'm going to tap back on that color. And then we are going to use brush number 9. This is a little bit more of a wet brush. It has less texture in it. It's very, very wet looking. So it's not as thick as this one. I wanted the focus of this illustration to be the red, so that's why it's a little bit thicker. But for the rest of the mushroom, I don't think it needs to be that thick. And with this one, I'm not too concerned about having a lot of texture. So I'm just kind of painting it in, but I'm using up and down strokes, and I'm lifting the pencil several times, so it creates a little bit of texture, but it doesn't need to be as textured. So I'm going to paint that in. So this brush is supposed to be similar to a wet gouache, not too wet. And the other one is supposed to be a little bit thicker. You can definitely see the difference. And let's see, there's this one here too. So let's paint that in. Now you could do this in a clipping mask, but I'm just going to keep it simple and paint over what we did earlier. So I'm going to continue and do a few more base colors. We have the stars remaining, so I'm going to go in and tap on plus, and we are going to bring back that traceable that we had, and let's paint in the stars. So the stars are this color right here. For the stars, I'm going to go in with this brush number 50, the one that we used to paint the foliage, and just paint it in so that there's a little bit of texture. Okay, so I think that's all the stars done. And now I want to paint in the rest of the yellow elements. So I'm actually going to do that in another layer because I want them to be on top of the red stuff layer. So I have red stuff here, I have the clipping mask here. I'm going to create a layer right here, and then I'm going to color in these windows here, and I'm going to do all of the bulbs. And I'm going to use a color that's not as saturated as that. I do find that one of the things with painting digitally is the ability to zoom in and get a lot more control. Okay, so all of the yellow elements are done. Now we can move on to the brown elements. I like to do everything by color. So let's tap on plus and new layer, and we're going to do brown stuff in this layer. So what is brown? We have some brown here, the thing that's holding all the lights together, and this is also brown. So I'm gonna go in and select this color as my main color, and then for my second color I'm gonna select this one, and I'm going to use the same brush and vary my pressure and just paint this in. So heavy pressure, light pressure. Okay, so right now, I think I can go in with some more base colors before I start to add in the details. So let's do the white of the mushroom caps. And I'm going to do the mushroom caps. I'll do it with this one, brush number 47. So this brush, depending on how much pressure you apply, you can get something that looks like this, so very flat. Or if you apply lower pressure, you can get a little bit of a painterly look, and it's good for details. Especially on the edges, I'm going to keep the pressure relatively light so it gets a little bit more texture. And then I'll go in a little bit more pressure in the middle of all of these elements. And you can use any brush that you want for the details, like we have a few other ones. They will all give a slightly different look. Okay, see, it's starting to come to life now. What I want to do here is I want to add in that plume, and I want to do this with a softer brush, something that's not as thick, because the plume is, light. So I think maybe I'll go in with this brush number 31 that we used earlier. We used it for the background. Let's have a look. Paint in that plume. I'm using light and heavy pressure just to get a variation. Before we move on, let's paint in the cat, because the cat is white. So let's just keep everything that's white in one layer. I'll call this white stuff. Okay, so the cat, I want the cat to be very defined. So I don't want to use the brush that has too much texture. So what I'm going to do for the cat is use this, brush number 1. It's a sketching pencil. It'll have more defined edges than any of the painterly brushes, so I'm going to use that for the cat. We'll do the details later. Just doing the base color for now. So now we've done pretty much all of the base colors. So now it's time to start doing details. You can do details in different layers. I'm just going to do everything in one layer just to keep it easy. So for details, I'm going to start off by using brush number 50. So this is a dual color brush, so select 2 colors of your choice for all of these details. Add some of these lines, very light pressure, because I want that texture. I'm going to go up in size and just fill in those stones. And it's just going to add a few blades of grass here and there. Details. This is really where your painting starts to come to life, depending on how you add your details. So I'm just going to add a few lines here and there, and they do not need to be perfect. And I want to add a little bit of definition to the bulbs, so I'm just going to grab the color of the bulb, and then I'm going to go down and just add some definition. A hint of other colors to some of these white spots. Just think it makes it look a little bit more interesting. And then I'm going to go in with a larger brush size, make sure that I'm on the right layer, so it's a layer right above our background. And then I'm just going to add a few strokes just right around the house. I am going to tap on brush number 1, which is the sketching pencil, and we are going to grab this color right here. This is not a dual color brush, so you just need to select one color. And I'm going to make sure that I'm on the right layer. I'm on the details layer, and I'm going to make it a little bit brighter, a little bit more saturated there. And maybe go up in size. So with this brush, depending on how much pressure you apply, you will get that sketchy pencil look. It's nice for that mixed media look, so I'm just going to add a little hint of color here and there. And some cheeks, oh my god, the ears. And final step, little definition behind the cat. So I'm going to grab this color here and go down and just add a little bit, not completely an outline, but just some lines here and there, just so it pops a little bit. It's very subtle. The cat is super tiny. So I think this is done. And then if you want to add more details, you definitely can. And you can also play around with the colors. But I think this is done. So let's have a look at what we made together. So that is the bottom. So we did the grass. It has this nice texture. We have a lot of interesting texture on these rocks, these stones. And then the foliage has really nice painterly vibes. Thank you very much for watching and watching till the end. This was a long painting, and I hope you learned something new. And if you did, please do give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next video.